Now, for a better analysis of things as they stand as of now, our correspondent Susan Tehrani joins us live from New York. Susan, tell us a little bit about the significance of this landmark resolution as it stands right now. 141 in favour, 5 against. What does it mean and what lies ahead in this conflict? Is this resolution going to lead to any kind of dousing of tensions?
Right. Member states say, well, UN resolutions do carry political weight, and what's hoped to achieve ultimately is something similar that's going to happen like back in 2014 with Crimea, when Russia annexed Crimea. And what happened is the Security Council back then voted on a draft resolution opposing a referendum on the status of Crimea, for example, when Russia completely invaded Crimea, and then member states went on record Crimea is of Russia. Now, with the advancement that Russia has into Ukraine, when countries right now go on record at the UN General Assembly, that really sets the precedent for later advancements of Russia if it decides to go ahead and try to claim any part of the Ukrainian territory. They're non-binding, but they do carry political weight. At least that's the hope of the countries that voted in favor of this. It was interesting to see how many countries really decided to abstain, and the reason for that was because they said collectively, really, their message was that they want a peaceful resolution to the conflict, and they said that they hope that some kind of ceasefire agreement between the two sides could be reached, considering the fact that Russia adamantly said that this is a resolution that not only will not stop the conflict, but it might even embolden some on both sides to raise up to take up more arms, which was somewhat alarming coming from the Russian ambassador. I do want to say that this resolution was initially meant to condemn Russia's actions into Ukraine. However, at the last minute, the condemnation of the invasion was cut out from the text of this resolution and instead was replaced with the resolution and member states, those who voted yes, deplore in the strongest term the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine. What they do
Susan,
make clear that they did condemn.
At this point, since you mentioned what you just have said, what is the significance of that? You're saying that there was a certain change in language. Can you elaborate on that for our viewers?
Right. One reason usually when there is a change in language is because the member states, or those who are calling, which was usually the European side here, in this case, European members of the Security Council who really called for this special session of the General Assembly. And just very quickly to take you back, the reason this General Assembly session was taking place was because the 5 permanent members of the Security Council behind me weren't able to reach an agreement regarding Russia's invasion into Ukraine because Russia is a P5 member, excuse me. So the reason for that is perhaps those countries could not garner enough support for all-out condemnation of Russia's invasion into Ukraine. That's why they had to change the language to bring more countries on board, and perhaps more countries were more comfortable with the language of deploring in the strongest term the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine, as opposed to an all-out condemnation. That may be one reason. However, the word condemn did stay in the text regarding Vladimir Putin's decision to put his nuclear forces on alert. So that was that. But, again, it wasn't the number of countries that the Europeans had hoped, but it was, of course, the resolution did pass.
Right, absolutely. But I think at this point, Susan, the big question is, we know that a draft resolution has been adopted, but will it, in a sense, deter Russian aggression? That, of course, is a big question at this point in this conflict.
Right. Likely not. I mean, we've seen that these resolutions, how much teeth ultimately, first of all, the United Nations has, and how much will and authority it has, considering the fact that, first of all, the General Assembly is a non-action group. Its resolutions are non-binding. It only can provide, quote-unquote, recommendations for what member states can do, even if it is armed action. And then it comes to the issue of the Security Council, which is taught to have more weight, but then, we talk about the quote-unquote international community, but when it comes to the Security Council, Russia and China are permanent members of the Security Council, so they are considered to be part of the international community as well. They're veto-wielding powers here. So, no, it won't. As we're seeing what's happening in Ukraine right now, this will not only perhaps deter Russia from going forward into Ukraine, but in the words of the Russian ambassador himself, he mentioned that this is not going to stop the violence. It's not going to cause any ceasefire. Russia does not support it because, this is a direct quote, Western partners not only pressured other countries to support it, but they openly and cynically threat to vote. And this document will embolden perhaps parties from both sides. He called them nationalists in Ukraine to take up arms, to be more emboldened to fight against the Russians. That's according to the Russian ambassador here. But no, again, these were recommendations. They hope that it could carry political will, but it may set the groundwork for what's to come, as I mentioned earlier, regarding what Russia plans to do in Ukraine, and if it decides to claim part of Ukraine territory, as it did in Crimea.
Right. Susan Tehrani, thank you so much for all those inputs, and thanks for joining us on WION at this hour. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.